St. Augustine commentary on Psalm 106 following. Then stood up Phinehas, and he appeased him, and the shaking ceased. Verse 30. He has related the whole briefly, because he is not here teaching the ignorant, but reminding those who know the history. The word shaking here is the same as breaking before, for it is one word in the Greek. Lastly, so great was their wickedness in being consecrated to the idol and eating the sacrifices of the dead, that is, because the Gentiles sacrificed to dead men as to God, that God would not be otherwise appeased than as Phinehas the priest appeased him when he slew a man and a woman together, whom he found in adultery. Numbers chapter 25, verse 8. If he had done this from hatred towards them, and not from love, with zeal for the house of God devoured him, it would not have been counted unto him for righteousness. Christ our Lord, indeed, when the New Testament was revealed, chose a milder discipline, but the threat of hell is more severe, and this we do not read of in those threatenings held out by God in his temporal government. And that was counted unto him for righteousness among all posterities for evermore. Verse 31. God counted this unto his priests for righteousness, not only as long as posterity shall exist, but for evermore. For he who knows the heart knows how to weigh with how much love for the people that deed was done. And they angered him at the waters of strife, so that Moses was vexed for their sakes. Verse 32. Because they provoked his spirit, so that he spake doubtfully with his lips. Verse 33. What is spoken doubtfully? As if God, who had done so great wonders before, could not cause water to flow from a rock, for he touched the rock with his rod with doubt, and thus distinguished this miracle from the rest in which he had not doubted. He thus offended, but deserved to hear that he should die without entering into the land of promise. Deuteronomy 32, verses 49 to 52. For being disturbed by the murmurs of an unbelieving people, he held not fast that confidence which he ought to have held. Nevertheless, God gives unto him, as unto his chosen, a good testimony even after his death, so that we may see that this wavering of faith was punished with this penalty only, that he was not allowed to enter that land whither he was leading the people. But they of those iniquities this psalm speaks, when they had entered into that temple land of promise, destroyed not the heathen which the Lord commanded them. Verse 34. But were mingled among the heathen and learned their works. Verse 35. Insomuch that they worshipped their idols, which became to them an offense. Verse 36. They are not destroying them, but mingling with them, became to them an offense. Yea, they offered their sons and their daughters unto devils. Verse 37. And shed innocent blood, even the blood of their sons and of their daughters, whom they offered unto the idols of Canaan. Verse 38. That history does not relate that they offered their sons and daughters to devils and idols, But neither can that psalm lie, nor the prophets who assert this in many passages of their rebukes. But the literature of the Gentiles is not silent respecting this custom of theirs. But what is it that follows? And the land was slain with bloods. We might suppose that this was a mistake of the writer, and that he had written imperfecta for infecta, were it not for the goodness of God, who has willed his scriptures to be written in many languages, were it not that we see it written as in the text in many Greek copies, which we have inspected. The land was slain with bloods. What does it mean then, the land was slain, unless this be referred to the men who dwelt in the land by a metaphorical expression? For they themselves were slaying their own souls when they offered up their sons, and when they shed the blood of infants who were far from consent to this crime, when it is said, they shed innocent blood. The land therefore was slain with bloods and defiled by their works. Verse 39. Since they themselves were slain in soul and defiled by their works, and they went a-warring after their own inventions. By inventions are meant what the Greeks call epitedemata, for this word does occur in the Greek copies, both in this and a former passage, where it is said, they provoked him to anger with their own inventions. Inventions, in both instances signifying what they had initiated others in. Let no man therefore suppose inventions to mean what they had of themselves instituted, without any example before them to imitate. Whence other translators in the Latin tongue have preferred pursuits, affections, imitations, pleasures to inventions, and the very same who here write inventions have elsewhere written pursuits. I chose to mention this, lest the word inventions applied to what they had not invented, but imitated from others, might raise a difficulty. Therefore was the wrath of the Lord kindled against his own people. Verse 40. Our translators have been unwilling to use the word anger for the Greek thumos, though some have used it, while others translate by indignation or mind. Whichever of these terms be adopted, passion does not affect God. But the power of punishing has assumed this name metaphorically from custom, insomuch that he abhorred his own inheritance, and he gave them over into the hand of the heathen, and they that hated them were lords over them. Verse 41. And their enemies oppressed them, and they were brought low under their hands. Verse 42. Since he has called them the inheritance of God, it is clear that he abhorred them and gave them over into their enemies' hands, not in order to their perdition, but for their discipline. Lastly, he says, many a time did he deliver them, but they provoked him with their own counsels. Verse 43. This is what he said above. They did not abide his counsel. Now, a man's counsel is pernicious to himself when he seeks those things which are his own only, not those which are God's. Philippians 2:21. In whose inheritance, which inheritance he himself is to us, when he deigned his presence for our enjoyment, being with the saints, we shall suffer no straitening from the society by our love of anything as our own possession. For that most glorious city, when it has gained the promised inheritance, in which none shall die, none shall be born, will not contain citizens who shall individually rejoice in their own, for God shall be all in all. 1 Corinthians 15:28. And whoever in this pilgrimage faithfully and earnestly does long for this society, does accustom himself to prefer common to private interests by seeking not his own things, but Jesus Christ's, lest by being wise and vigilant in his own affairs he provoke God with his own counsel. But hoping for what he sees not, let him not hasten to be blessed with things visible, and patiently, waiting for that everlasting happiness which he sees not, follow his counsel in his promises, whose aid he prayed for in his prayers. Thus he will also become humble in his confessions, so as not to be like those of whom it is said, they were brought down in their wickedness.